Thank you, everyone, for logging on this morning. Happy to be here with us. Um, my name is Charlie Lenticum. I'm a Services Director of Operations for the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority, or OAA for short. I'd like to welcome you to this installment of the OAA's Abatement Academy, which is a series of webinars that present best practices in opioid and substance use abatement strategies and highlight efforts being funded with opioid settlement funds in Virginia. Our speakers generously give their time and expertise to present these sessions to you. Like all Abatement Academy webinars, today's session is being recorded. Both recording and the presentation will be uploaded to the OAA website, and an email will be sent to everyone who is registered, providing a link to those materials. If you have any questions or comments, please type them into the Q&A box or use the hand raise function. And as moderator, I'll screen questions and pose them to the presenter either during the session or near the end. I see we already have a question. A second. You may go ahead. And you have to unmute. Ms. Slago Perry, did you have a question? Okay, I'm going to assume that was an error, and that's no worries. Sorry, everybody. Understand. I have done that myself. So there we go. All right. Today's presentation is Back to School Part 1, the expansion of recovery high schools in Virginia. Please note if an earlier newsletter that went out, Back to School Part 2 has been moved to a November session. If you already registered that, that should follow along with you. There's a different session that is now set up for September 25th. But today's presentation is focusing on the expansion of recovery high schools in Virginia, and we're very fortunate to be joined by Karen Grabowski to discuss this topic with us. Karen is a child and adolescent program specialist with the Office of Child and Family Services at the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. Karen has been supporting programs and projects throughout Virginia to enhance and expand the continuum of care for youth with mental health, substance use, and co-occurring disorders for the past 4 years at DBHDS. This includes supporting the Chesterfield Recovery Academy since it opened in 2022. Prior to working at DBHDS, Karen spent approximately 15 years in the field providing direct services to youth across multiple settings, including residential, outpatient, and intensive in-home services at a community service board. Also wanted to mention that OAA has done some funding of recovery high school efforts in the last couple of years. Our first award was to DBHDS to kind of work on a process to kind of identify the spots for the next potential recovery high schools, and they ended up working with the Department of Education to do that, which actually resulted in an application that we funded effective here in July of this year with the Saw region, Stanton, Augusta, and Waynesboro, who are working on building capacity to open a recovery high school in their area. And then we also have given awards to Virginia Beach, which is opening a new recovery high school to help with some of their clinical operations. And that is Virginia Beach serving in cooperation with a lot of the localities down there, Norfolk, Suffolk, Portsmouth, Chesapeake. I may be missing somebody, apologize if I am. They're all working regionally on that recovery high school. We've also provided an award this fiscal year to Chesterfield for the Chesterfield Recovery Academy to help with transportation for people in the region that are eligible and ready to attend but have trouble getting to the academy, hoping to be able to reach more people with that. And we also have a new award that will go into effect October 1st with the Department of Education for them to be able to provide technical assistance to existing recovery high schools. So with all of that, I will now turn it over to Karen for the session.
Thank you, Charlie. And as you can already hear, there's a lot of work being done in this space. And I really want to start by just thanking the Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority for allowing me to come talk today, but also the support with the funds for the recovery high schools in Virginia. It's a really exciting time. And so just want to make sure I say thanks for that. And thank you for everyone who took some time to join us today. I had to sacrifice my second screen to be closer to my router to make sure I have the bandwidth to not be breaking up on you. So I cannot see any of you right now. So Charlie's going to support by just making sure if there are questions that come up. Charlie, you can feel free to interrupt and let me know there's questions coming up. And then hopefully we can save a lot of them for the end where I can stop sharing my screen and maybe be able to see you guys and your faces. So that's kind of where we're at today. We are going to quickly just talk about what a recovery high school is and what it's not, just to make sure we all have that basic understanding. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of recovery high schools in Virginia, where we're at now, and then the current outcomes in Virginia that will be specific to Chesterfield Recovery Academy, as it is the longest operating recovery high school in Virginia. And then we'll jump into looking at both some of the Virginia experiences and national best practices, national recommendations from the Association of Recovery Schools when it comes to considering expanding or launching a new recovery high school, possibly in a different location in Virginia. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish. We're going to try to save hopefully about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. So hoping to get through this information fairly quickly. All right, so starting with recovery high schools. In the name, obviously, it suggests that the most important component is that it is an operational school. So it's there to educate and support students in recovery from substance use or co-occurring disorders. They must be able to meet state requirements for awarding a secondary high school diploma. So that means it is not just a tutoring service or a building where students go and work on schoolwork that a high school sends over to them. It is its own separate school. It can be a school within a school, but we'll get to that later, where they are capable of awarding a secondary school diploma. And what that means is typically that staff at a recovery high school does tend to include school administrative staff, teachers. It can include substance use counselors and recovery coaches or peer recovery specialists, as well as some mental health or clinical staff. And each school can kind of determine what their needs are and what staff makes the most sense to support their students. All students enrolled must be in recovery and working a program of recovery. And then the piece to that is that it's determined by the student in the school. So not everybody's recovery plan or program of recovery looks identical. There's small enough numbers and enough support staff that there's an individualized approach to supporting the educational and recovery components at the school. And working on an abstinence-focused program of recovery. And again, this is agreed upon by the student and the school. So looking at abstinence as a goal or as the focus, but we're going to talk in a little bit about how not requiring abstinence to stay in the program as long as safety and goals and active work towards recovery are still happening for the student. So a little bit deeper dive into this, really designed for youth who are actively saying, I am interested in recovery from substances. So this isn't a school where you had a disciplinary action at high school or you're being court ordered to be there. It really is the young person themselves saying and recognizing, I think I might be experiencing challenges with substances. I'm curious about being in an environment that might be able to support me reducing my use, ending my use, and allowing me to get my education. And they are choosing that path of recovery. And it's really about creating an environment that is safe for that youth. So sometimes going to the public high school setting might create so many use kind of activators, or just being around other students or young people that use can be too much. And it really poses this challenge for students who have to say, like, do I prioritize my recovery or do I prioritize my education? And a recovery high school is designed to allow them to do both. They're in a safe environment where everyone's focused on recovery and they're getting their education. And so it is abstinence focused, as I said before, but also embracing the foundational principles of harm reduction. And this has been a huge discussion at the national level. I remember being at the Association of Recovery Schools conference back in 2022, where it was really a high focus of how do you incorporate harm reduction, especially when you're focusing on adolescents in the school setting. And so this is really to say, we're meeting kids where they are. We're identifying that maybe a high risk substance they're willing to commit to abstinence around, but asking a 14 to 15-year-old to commit to abstinence forever or around everything could be a difficult ask. So if they are committed to recovery and we're reducing, let's say, fentanyl or some substance that has really high risk, and maybe they're not quite there yet with their marijuana use, that the high school could still continue to work with them and try to use some motivational interviewing techniques, really engage them around their recovery goals to continue to try to work towards that complete abstinence while understanding that's not quite where they are right this moment. And then it's really centered around youth choice, power, voice, really creates a sense of community and connection. It's one of my favorite things about going to Chesterfield Recovery Academy's celebration ceremonies at the end of the year is you see how connected these students have become in the sense of community they've developed with each other, because they are really bought into and provided opportunities to provide input and feedback. And it's just a very individualized approach to their education and recovery. And you can see that when you meet with them, and they're very connected to the high school. So again, we're meeting youth where they're at. It's non-judgmental, non-coercive. That doesn't mean the recovery high schools ignore things, right? Like if a student has a drug screen that comes back positive for something, it's that discussion of, what was happening, what can we learn from this, how do we incorporate the lessons learned into your recovery plan, how can we prevent future setbacks. So it really is meeting them where they're at and trying to support them through a recovery program and process, which can have bumps. And it recognizes that adolescent needs are really different from those of adults. So really rooted in a very specific adolescent focused interventions and process. Really focus on stages of change. So if anyone's familiar with stages of change, really hoping to catch students who are at least into the contemplative planning stage, when accepting, or if accepting students in pre-contemplative, we start to possibly risk that safe environment. We don't want to compromise other students' recovery and where they are in their stages of change. If they're in action and maintenance, it really is about what can the school support. And so if someone is a little bit pre-contemplative but sort of exploring, it's really up to the high school to determine, can they effectively work with this youth and maintain the safety of the other students as well. They are not designed for youth who are simply experimenting or can use substances without significant impact on functioning. What that really speaks to is kind of that intention of them coming close to meeting a substance use disorder diagnosis as laid out in the DSM-5. It isn't necessary that they've had treatment and had these diagnoses formally in the past, but it is designed for youth who are having a hard time cutting back or having negative experiences because of it. They're no longer engaging socially or they're struggling academically. Some of those symptoms that are connected to a substance use disorder, as opposed to a youth who tries marijuana once and the family is like, "Oh my gosh, you experimented, and we want to send you to this recovery high school." Part of the community and the reason that recovery high schools and the students feel such a sense of connection is there is this collective experience and understanding between them. It's people who have been there and gone through the same things. So really making sure that students do meet that kind of level of need. Not to say that students who are experimenting or using without consequences may not need some sort of support or need. It's just not a recovery school setting. Support multiple pathways of recovery. So again, that very individualized approach, really trying to promote equity of access to the school environment and prioritizing student safety and honoring and valuing student leadership, ownership, and voice in the development of the program. So there's a lot of recovery high schools that have allowed their students to pick the school colors or pick the school mascot or take some sort of ownership inside the building, like painting murals on the walls, or there's a lot of creative ways that recovery high schools really try to get students invested and taking ownership in the entire school setting. And then just to wrap up what recovery high schools are and are not, they are not treatment programs. They are schools. They are not designed to provide primary treatment for substance use or co-occurring disorders. So they offer the possible recovery coaches or peer piece, as well as some clinical supports, but it is not designed to be the primary treatment. It does not replace substance use or mental health treatment. So it really is a school that has recovery supports, not a treatment program that also offers some educational options. And participation in any form of treatment for substance misuse may not be an insurance requirement. And this really goes back to that, making sure anyone who needs to access the school can, recognizing that some people have not received formal treatment, not because they don't need it or want it or desire it, but maybe they don't have insurance or they don't have the transportation or it's not available in their community. So it really is about making sure any young person that desires it and is in need of it can access a recovery high school. So that's the recovery high school, what it is and what it's not. Charlie, are there any questions so far on just this information?
Not at this point.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so what has this looked like in Virginia? It's been quite a work in progress, and we're at a really exciting time. So the initial legislation actually passed in March of 2020 to support Chesterfield Recovery High School. Delegate Coiner and the superintendent of Chesterfield Schools at that time really worked together to move that forward. However, if everyone thinks back to March of 2020, I think we can all remember the world got a little bit turned upside down and COVID froze funding. So it was largely on pause all of 2021. At the end of 2021, conversations did come back up about could we possibly pursue this again? It was brought back in front of the General Assembly and again revisited and approved. And so during the spring to summertime of 2022, Chesterfield County really started planning intensely around this. The partnership between Chesterfield County Public Schools and the Chesterfield County CSB was developed that summer to ensure that the public school could provide the school elements, so the teachers, the administrative staff, the space, the logistics of a school, right, school lunches, all that kind of stuff, and the CSB was going to provide the recovery supports. So they hired some clinicians and looked to connect with some peers to both engage youth and their families. That is another piece of a recovery high school, is that they do provide some support to the families so that they understand how to support their student and their child who is working a recovery program. It was also in July of 2022 that the first article got posted about Virginia Beach exploring a recovery high school. So the Virginia Beach school has been in discussion for quite some time. They had done some extensive work, visited some recovery high schools, and had been planning for quite a bit of time. And in August of 2022, Chesterfield Recovery Academy opened its doors. So a very exciting time. They were still finalizing a lot of details, but made it happen, opened up, and really quickly started to accept students and enroll more and more throughout the year and serve the Virginia Department of Education Region 1 schools. So that led us into 2023, where at some point in time during that year, OAA and DBHDS began talking about could we possibly look at a second recovery high school. Right Help Right Now also was focused on recovery high schools. And so by the fall of 2023, the Opioid Abatement Authority funds were awarded to DBHDS to support the planning of a second recovery high school. Pretty quickly, DBHDS, we are not the school authority in Virginia. So pretty quickly, we reached out to the Virginia Department of Education and said, hey, we've got these planning dollars and we don't have the slightest idea about schools and operating schools. So can we partner together? Can we look at how we assess interest from school districts, readiness from school districts? And we also did some research into the needs in Virginia. DBHDS had recently completed a adolescent substance use needs assessment in Virginia and understood where some of the gaps were in treatment and resources available to adolescents. And then we also dug into some data from both the department, from DMAS and from our own data about services being provided to adolescents specific to substance use throughout Virginia, to kind of figure out where are the high need areas. And during this process, interest was sought by school districts. Several school districts expressed interest. DOE put out an application process, and Waynesboro did apply and was awarded the planning dollars to consider opening a recovery high school in the Waynesboro, Augusta, Stanton kind of area. In the midst of that, while we were trying to figure out, all right, maybe a second recovery high school, a bill and funding was introduced in early 2024 to support some funding for Loudoun County and Virginia Beach. So all of a sudden, in the middle of working with DOE to talk about where a second school could be, these funds got put out for Loudoun County and Virginia Beach. So now we went from having just a second school to having a second, third, and fourth recovery high school in Virginia. And it was at that point in time that DBHDS, the Opioid Abatement Authority, Department of Ed really started talking about, okay, now that we're this is a much bigger expansion. How do we make sure we're supporting everybody in Virginia appropriately? What can we do? And so we started planning for the community of practice sessions, which the Department of Education took the lead on, and got Chesterfield Recovery Academy to be present, and targeted topics to help these 3 other localities just get some information about what they should be considering, and policies and practices, and everything that it might take to open up a recovery school. And then as we got into 2025, we also then contracted with the Association of Recovery Schools to do some targeted technical assistance and support for the school systems, because there is already this association that's already established. They have wonderful resources and some best practices and information that's available to school systems. We wanted to make sure Virginia was following along with the associations, just some of the information they had and best practices. So that came into effect early this year and is still going on. And so what's resulted and where we're at today is that Chesterfield Recovery Academy is entering their 4th year. They're completing the accreditation process. So the Association of Recovery Schools does require that a recovery high school be operational for 3 years before they can do the accreditation process. So Chesterfield Recovery Academy is doing that as soon as they can. And so that's happening for Chesterfield. River Ridge Learning Center, which is the Waynesboro Augusta Stanton partnership, opened their doors on August 6th of 2025. Loudon opened, I think it was August 21st. It might have been the 22nd, if somebody wants to correct me on that. They opened their recovery high school middle of August, and then Harbor Hope Center, which is the Virginia Beach collaboration regional program, opened their doors on September 2nd of 2025. So just 9 short days ago. So again, we've moved from not just, can we have a second recovery high school? We've now, there's now 4 operating in Virginia. So a very exciting time. And as you heard Charlie mention at the beginning, there's still a lot of focus from both the Department of Education and DBHDS on how we support these high schools as they are now open, but how do you sustain, how do you implement, and just kind of take your policies and practices and hone them and make sure they're being the most helpful for the students at your school and your community, while respecting and honoring both what Virginia's focus is, as well as the national, the association's goals and focus for recovery high schools. So that's Virginia. And so again, Chesterfield Recovery Academy is the one that has been operating for the last 3 years, and they do have some current outcomes. Highest enrollment out of the last 3 years is 31, which kind of makes me giggle because I was there for the first conversations, and it was, we'll cap our student max at 20, and then it was no 25, and then it was 30, and then it was maybe if we expand the space a little bit, we could get up to 45. So I'm not even sure right now what Chesterfield would tell you is their max capacity, but they have continued to try to meet the need that has been present throughout DOE Region 1. So 31 students, it may sound like a small number, but for a recovery high school, it's a really good number, and it really came out of trying to meet the needs in that region. They have had 19 high school graduates. Some of these graduates have gone on to the military. Some of them have gone on to college. Again, they've got amazing stories. And if I had more than an hour, I'm sure Justin, if he's in here, would share with you the remarkable students that he's been able to work with. They have had representation from 8 school districts, and this primarily is because they have had a plan for transportation to make sure students outside of Chesterfield County can get to the school without having to rely on themselves because they're teenagers, or rely on families because that could be a significant financial and time burden. So they have had representation from a lot of DOE Region 1. Overall, they've served 60 students, which again can sound like a small number, but if we can help 60 students, and if you think about or do any research on the cost to society of students who do not complete high school, of adults requiring intensive substance use services, and even substance related emergencies that require trips to the emergency room or other kinds of interventions. If we can serve 60 students over a few years, it's really the return on investment and the benefit to the community is so significant. It's really remarkable and really awesome to see that 60 students have been served. A collective 300 months of sobriety and over 3,000 hours of clinical services provided. So they do regular, check-ins in the morning. They do some individual sessions with the students. They do some group work. Their staff and both their clinical staff and educational staff are trained in things like trauma-informed schools and some restorative practices. So they really work hard. That idea of having a safe environment is really, really critical to the success of Chesterfield Recovery Academy and any recovery high school. All right, Charlie, how are we doing on questions?
We do have one that is
Okay.
chat, and also Justin Savoy has noted that he is on the call and available
Okay.
to come up and answer any questions if we need him to.
Perfect.
But the question we have here is, what happens if the student has a return to use while at the Chesterfield Recovery Academy?
So Justin's more than welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. The return to use usually would result in some of the recovery and clinical staff talking through, what happened, what were the stressors, what have we learned. If the student can commit to continuing to work a recovery program and process, and again, that does not mean perfection. We know from both adult services and adolescent services, return to use is often a part of the learning process. And so the schools take it as an opportunity to learn, grow, and add to the recovery plan. If it continues to happen, or if it starts to compromise the safety of the other students, so for example, they bring substances to the high school, that's when Chesterfield Recovery Academy will start considering, is this the program for you? They also do a really nice job, though, when those times happen that maybe a student, it's deemed no longer appropriate because of their ongoing use or the concerns for safety of other students. They leave the door really open and inviting, that if they change their mind, if they start working their plan of recovery and they want to reconsider coming back to Chesterfield Recovery Academy, it's a very engaging, welcoming process where they will definitely accept a student back who has made some mistakes, but then demonstrated the willingness and ability to re-engage in a recovery process and program. So there are some limits. Those are all laid out in the policies and student handbook for Chesterfield Recovery Academy. But there is a process of working with students up to a point or to agree, especially if we start looking at safety concerns or compromising the other students' recovery. Justin, is there anything you want to add to that?
You hit it on the nail on the head. So yeah, that was good. We do also just take it as a time to get to know our students too, because this is the first time that someone actually gets the clinical support for the first time, actually working with a therapist that actually like to talk to and work with. So learning their stressors also helps us educate their parents too on how to support them at home. So if a student returns to use, we use it as an educational opportunity for our staff and families. And then we also treat them when it comes to doing our urinary drug screening test is that this is not an I got you moment. It's basically to see where you are. So if you have returned to use, it's not to be embarrassed or not try to hide it from us, and that transparency is like the biggest key.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, Justin.
All right. So when it comes to expanding or planning for additional recovery high schools, we're going to just go through some national best practices, but also talk about some Virginia specific experiences or questions, kind of information or things we've learned along the way. The national best practices, I don't think are surprising. A lot of it is rooted in what looks like implementation science, right? Have a strategic plan. Form a board of directors, work with community partners. In Virginia, this has been really important to understand that when you're looking at localities, you have the school board, you have the either a city board of directors or a county board. They all need to be working together to really make sure everyone is in support of a recovery high school. Start looking at school leadership with proven experience, who can lead a recovery high school, who has some recovery therapeutic experience. Develop partnerships. The partnerships are really for all of it. It's the referrals, right? Where are you going to get referrals from? Do you have treatment centers or substance use providers? Are your local schools going to be the referral source? The school counselors who may know the students the best and know which students might be struggling with some substance use disorders. And then the partnerships to make sure that your school has all the resources and supports that it needs. Chesterfield Recovery Academy partners with VCU and their Rams in Recovery. So it's the partnerships really are critical to the success of a school setting. Then how are you going to promote the school and implement the evaluation of both the academic and therapeutic programs? So, what data are we gathering? How are we evaluating how students are doing and the success to make sure that the program is meeting the needs of the students and the community needs? In Virginia, some of the things we've provided to localities interested in opening a recovery high school is collaborate, right? Reach out to Justin and say, hey, can I come take a tour of Chesterfield Recovery Academy? And can we see what's going on? So visit the schools. You could ask to visit other states. I think Virginia Beach did when they first started. Make sure you're developing policies and procedures early on based on the needs of your community. So again, that can go back to, are we taking students who are pre-contemplative? Are we only taking students who are already in a planning stage? What are the additional policies that we need to make sure our students in school are successful? And then again, as I mentioned in the last slide, based on the Virginia experiences, make sure community and local government engagement and buy-in to the project is there, that you have ideas for financial supports. All 4 operating schools, financial supports look a little bit different. So we're still working in Virginia about how we can maybe put some structure in place to make that a little bit more consistent. But the 4 that have started have really been creative and found some financial supports and ways to have the appropriate budget needed to operate, but also how do you plan for sustaining the program? And then, of course, the transportation needs for potential students, because we know getting to school can be a barrier, especially if we're looking at regional programs that might be a little bit far away. Some guiding questions that might help your community explore if a recovery high school is something that's needed, and the possible, not solution, but resource that you should be available in your community. So do you have the capacity to implement a recovery high school? What supports are already in place? Are there partnerships between the school and the community services board or private providers? Does the school have the means to increase staff to support this project? And again, that can go back to the funding and budget. If we don't already have the means, what do we need to look for in terms of funding? Do we have a physical location that's available or available space to implement this project? Are there types of family and community engagement activities you already have in place so that a recovery high school can also lean on those? Are there memorandums of understanding in place so that they can provide specific support, clinical or recovery support? Do we have a specific referral process? How are students going to be identified? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to open a recovery high school if you have no idea how students are going to be identified or get there. And then are there adolescent support groups and substance use services to enhance recovery capital? So recovery capital is really about, in this situation, in adolescents, what they have available to them to support recovery. So it could be social opportunities, it could be services, it could be family support, it could be education and information. It's the totality of what a young person needs to hopefully support their recovery plan. So do those things already exist in your community? Because if they don't, the high school may not have the support outside of the school walls to really support young people in recovery. What types of services are provided for adolescents with substance use? Do they have access to a full continuum of care if an adolescent needs intensive outpatient or some other sort of substance use service? Is it available? Do providers offer tailored services for adolescents, or do you only have providers who work with adults? What supports can you or anyone in the community offer to a recovery high school? And then what challenges do you face, right? Really exploring what challenges might be present to serving adolescents dealing with substance use or co-occurring disorders. And so just really thinking through a lot of these questions, again, not that you have to have the perfect answer or a perfect plan in place, but have we considered all the information we need to as we think about, is opening a recovery high school something that our community should pursue? And then there are some lessons learned from National Technical Assistant. The Association of Recovery Schools was kind enough to provide us with some of this information. They have found that to create a successful recovery high school, having a dedicated full-time school leader is critical. So we're not having a principal or an administrator who is popping around to multiple campuses and responsible for multiple schools, but having a full-time dedicated person in the building would be critical. And I'm sure Justin is just nodding his head that he needs to be at Chesterfield Recovery Academy every day. Have a uniform data collection protocol, both school and recovery focused. This is something that Virginia is still working on. We actually have a webinar in a couple of weeks to help support the schools around understanding the data collection. This helps both demonstrate its effectiveness, but also plan for improvement. And then it helps with national data. If all recovery high schools are gathering the same information, we get a lot better outcomes just because you have more students to evaluate. Make sure there are dedicated resources for marketing and branding. People need to know what a recovery high school is, how to make a referral, who's appropriate, what your school is doing. This can also help with community engagement and buy-in. Ideally, it's located in a dedicated school building. If that's not possible, the school within a school model is workable, but making sure there are clearly defined dedicated spaces and resources for the recovery high school students. System-wide professional development should be provided, topics and arcs of learning, and collaborative between overseeing agencies and the providers. Again, DOE was kind enough to start a community of practice, which we plan to continue. And then also ongoing technical assistance and other support. Professional development also through trainings of staff to make sure educational staff understands some substance use and trauma informed and the restorative practices, and making sure that clinical staff and recovery staff understand educational information so that everybody's working together to really help the students be successful. Convene cohorts based on school roles. The association does have some of this available. They get administrators together to just kind of brainstorm and collaborate. Some interesting challenges and barriers come up for recovery high schools. And so it's nice to have a group of administrators who can talk through what they do or what their policies address. And Virginia is also looking to do this for next year, possibly starting, I think, in 2026 at a statewide level. And then regularly convene school leaders and promote continued connection with national recovery school community. So really that ongoing connection to the Association of Recovery Schools. We are absolutely looking for schools to be aware of the accreditation process, pursue the accreditation process when it's available to them, and keep accessing those national best practices and resources. So, okay, I kept to my time limit. I got through all the information within about 45 minutes. I'm really proud of myself. I am going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see you and we can ask questions and have more of a conversation, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Thanks, Justin, for being on and hanging out and providing some additional context where needed. So, yes, please, if you have any questions, I've got one in the Q&A. If you'd like, you can also use the raise hand feature if it's easier to ask it. I do want to make one point before we go in from an OAA standpoint. For those that aren't aware, like school boards cannot apply directly to the OAA for funds. The OAA can only give grants directly to cities, counties, and state agencies. So before going too far in the process, you have to make sure that if you're searching potentially to apply for OAA funds, that you've got your localities are on board with this, as they have funding buckets that they are in control of directly, and then there's competitive buckets of funding that they can also apply for, but they have to be the applicant, and then they can partner with whoever they identify as the right people to execute the award. But it's just something we want to make sure that everybody has a good basis on. And if you're a school board and you're working on trying to figure out what to do and how to put things together, you're happy to reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk with you through, give you suggestions of where you should be before you go address regarding opioid abatement funds and whatnot. So, all right. First question here we've got, will you describe the process that Virginia is using to ensure authentic youth peer support providers are available to the recovery high schools?
Hi, Christy. I appreciate your question. So, Christy, full transparency. As you have heard, these 4 openings have been so individualized to the community and not through any established process. We are still working on processes for what each recovery high school looks like to meet the student needs, while also allowing the flexibility for the school and that community to really determine exactly what's best for them. As I have attended some of the conferences, some of the staff refer to their sort of peer services more as like recovery coaching. Some have peer recovery specialists, some have family engagement specialists or family support specialists. And so the answer is we don't yet. The topic and conversation of having a young person who has their own lived experience in navigating substance use challenges at an adolescent who is now in a place of their own recovery and wellness to give back, to have that person in a recovery high school, how beneficial that can be. I think in other ways, schools have creatively problem solved that. So like Chesterfield Recovery Academy, I think their peer is more of a family peer. Justin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they partner with VCU Rams in Recovery, and those are all young people in recovery who are there to kind of be a little bit of that peer support, that young adult person who has lived experience. And so it is a focus. It is a conversation. It is something is near and dear to my heart, having youth peer support available throughout Virginia, and especially in spaces and places like recovery high schools and crisis centers and anywhere we can possibly get them. But there isn't a formal process as of yet. Justin, I saw you come off mute.
Oh yeah, I was going to just add on that with our peer Nicole, she does a lot of the family oriented activities, things for family nights, reaching out to parents, providing them with resources in order to assist their child. And so also speaking to them from the perspective of a youth in recovery herself, and how to support their children, which has been like really beneficial to our parents.
So Christy, it's a work in progress. And then I hope everybody saw real fast. I just want to point out that Roger with the Association of Recovery Schools did put a link in the chat to a 3-page recovery high school overview. This does have some national research and data in it. It goes into a little bit of what we talked about today. It's a really good resource if you're interested in just looking at that. It's quick and easy to read and very helpful.
Any other questions? Either going into the Q&A or using the raise hand function. Give a second in case somebody's typing.
And then Charlie, if there's anything, Roger, if you're still here, if there's anything you felt like I missed and you want to make sure it gets highlighted here, if you want to put it in the chat or ask to come off mute, I'd be happy to hear from you too, Roger.
Working on getting him hooked up.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. Actually, I didn't know you did a great job, Karen, and obviously it's always great to have the practitioners doing the work, Justin, share. I don't know how many people on the webinar, I can't see that, but I just wanted to say from a national perspective, what a great job Virginia has done. 'Cause I'm working across the country with Missouri, with Oregon, with Maine, with a whole bunch of other localities starting recovery high schools. In Virginia, the Department of DBHDS and Karen's leadership and Christine Stone, who's on the call, have established such a great framework to start one school, Chesterfield, and Justin has made it happen for himself and provide a foundation for these other 3 schools to start and prosper. Justin's already kind of developed not into a leader in Virginia, but a national leader. My favorite presentation at the national conference this year was Justin's presentation that he did. So it really is a team effort in Virginia between the providers, the funders, the state agencies, and Karen's reference. There's a lot of work to be done in certain areas, funding and operational pieces. But Virginia is really, developing a national profile and not just what they're doing in Virginia, but what they're doing to share it with others. So I think it's just great what Virginia's done. It's not by luck or happenstance. It's a lot of planning and coordination and collaboration. And then you have just tremendous people at the administrative level like Karen and Christine, and then Justin, who I just got off the phone with Bruce, who opened up 9 days ago. Karen referenced that. And he said, next time you see Justin, which is now, make sure you say thank you. Tell him to say thank you for everything that he's done to give back. And I know Amy, who's an amazing school leader at River Ridge, and Frederica at the Loudoun County School agree. So definitely on the right track, and look forward to seeing Virginia continue to grow and develop.
I appreciate that, Roger. It's exciting. It's a really exciting time to watch these 3 schools open, to watch Justin and Chesterfield Recovery Academy continue to grow. And we definitely appreciate the support that we've had from the association along the way, because we had them come in back in 2022 as well to give some TA back then. So it's been a process and a lot of planning and a lot of lessons learned, and we still have a lot more growing and learning to do, but we're excited for where Virginia is and what we can offer young people who are interested in exploring recovery in adolescence, not having to wait, not having to choose between an education and recovery, and really helping them start a path of wellness early on in life. So again, I want to thank the Opioid Abatement Authority for having me today, and for the planning dollars that we had that helped us get to where we're at. And it's exciting to see where we go from here.
Yes, I don't have any other questions that have come in, so thank you to Karen as well as Justin and Roger for jumping in unprepared and helping this out. It's great to hear that Virginia's once again leading the way and sharing, and hopefully we all can continue to have this conversation. I'd be excited to have this conversation again in about another year or two to see where some of these other the results some of these newer schools are getting and things. So appreciate everyone being here, and as mentioned at the beginning, recording and the presentation will be available within a couple of days after this, and come to you via email and be posted on our website. So thanks again to everyone. We'll see you.
Thank you everyone for joining this morning.